I learned from them to just kind of like rise above things. Like obviously there's hate in a lot of people's hearts.
Your parents. First, explain the stay tattoo.
That's sort of just like an ode to my parents. Like I think my parents like instilled in my brother and I both like the right values, the right morals. They're like the people that like I think I aspire to be like. So that stay tattoo is sort of just like a reminder to like just stay in that lane. I watched my parents sacrifice for so long, whether it was like working crazy hours, having 2 jobs each, just to give us everything, that we needed. Even since I was a kid, like my biggest like thing was always like trying to pay them back. And, being able to do that from like a financial standpoint is different than like, making them proud or showing them that they're, you're grateful for what they did.
And it's almost not till later in life, and maybe when you're a parent of your own, that probably you truly appreciate their sacrifices.
For sure. There's times where I'm like with my kids and I'm like, man, I need to call my parents and tell them like what a great job they did. Like as a parent, you sort of realize that like you're just like trying to make decisions in real time, like the best decision possible in real time. And as a kid, you think, oh, my parents know everything. Like they have this all planned out, or at least I did.
They were both educators.
Mm-hmm.
Why decide to homeschool you then?
I think because they saw how the what's the term, like they saw how the sausage was made. They saw the inside of the Oklahoma public, and not just Oklahoma, but they saw the inside of a public school system. And there's great teachers in public school systems that are just set up to fail. Right. Not fail, but they're just set up to not be able to utilize the abilities or the talents or the skills that they have. The public school system sometimes in certain areas, it does the kids and the teachers a disservice. My mom, took the reins and was like, I'm gonna teach them, how I think they should be taught.
And your parents choose to give up that salary to homeschool you and your brother Taylor. I believe they start a side hustle trophy business out of the house. You and your brother really weren't feeling that, were you?
No. There were certain aspects of it that were okay or a little bit more fun, I guess.
And what were those?
I didn't mind building the trophies. There's like columns in the trophies, or it's just a single column. My dad would cut the columns and it was like an assembly line. My mom would take it out of the box, hand him the thing, he would cut it, he would pass it to Taylor, Taylor would dust it off, I would take it, put it in the box. And it was just like over the same thing over and over and over for literally felt like 7 hours.
How about the hardest part of being coached by your dad?
He knew how to like push the right buttons, and I felt like he was just always on me. As soon as I left high school, I was just like, man, like I'm so thankful for that because I'm now here and nobody else has been able to get those things out of me, the way he did. But he was so good at it because as soon as we left like the gym or left practice or whatever it was, he was just like, he was dad, so he did a great job of like balancing those two.
To what extent was there ever a conversation you had with him where, since those days where you like truly kind of conveyed the appreciation for that?
I've definitely conveyed that several times, just like sometimes I'll just text him randomly and just tell him like how thankful I am. But definitely like, around when I got drafted, I think maybe that Father's Day, I've had those conversations with him, so I hope he knows.
Your dad's black, mom's white. Mm-hmm. What do you think you learned because of that growing up?
A lot. I learned from them to just kind of like rise above things. Like you don't always have to give people the reaction they want. A lot of times people are sometimes saying things just to get a reaction. Obviously there's hate in a lot of people's hearts and people that choose to say or write or whatever, some of these racial things. I think that they're looking to get a rise out of somebody, and my parents were so good at they were fine. They were good. Nobody was like rattling their love or what they had. Was there ever an instance that you recall where they conveyed that? I had a conversation with my mom about it and my brother, where she was telling us things that like people would say to her, and like we both sort of remember these things, but at the time when you're like 6 years old and like 9 years old, like you're not really thinking like, oh, this person, like this had sort of like either a racial undertone or it was sort of blatantly racist. There was just times where my mom or people would say things to my mom, not knowing that she was married to a black man and her kids were mixed, and she would just kind of like just dead it. You know what I mean? In like in a way where she wasn't condoning, and she wasn't, all up in arms like yelling at people.
You do remember noticing that she was treated better by police than your dad was?
Not even just police. I remember one time like a gas station clerk was like kind of like questioning me and my brother, like, "Are you guys good?" And we were like, "Yeah." And they was like, "Where's your dad?" And we were like, "Right there." And he was like kind of like looking at us, and like I didn't really think that much of it. I thought it was a weird interaction, As a kid, you can kind of sense that,
right?
But you don't realize why until you think about it when you're older, and you're like, "Oh, he thought my dad kidnapped us." You know what I mean? And there's like things like that where it's just not just like such like outwardly blatant racism. There's just like things where you realize later on that people don't know how to handle certain situations.
And how true is it that a girl you were once interested in dating in high school told you she wasn't allowed to date you?
Yeah, that's true. That's really the only time I ever heard that.
Did she say why?
She basically said her dad wouldn't let her date somebody that was black. Pretty straight up, and when I think about it, it's pretty bold of her. For some reason, growing up, I just kind of thought that's how it was. Like now, I think we all are so used to having this conversation, and it's been at the forefront of so many things, especially recently. And with social media and all this stuff, you hear the stories and things move around and people get sort of condemned. But unfortunately, a lot of times when I was growing up, I just was like, that's just how it is.